everybody, and welcome to this new episode of the MACE Podcast. I'm your host, Marco Macente, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. Today, I'm so thrilled to welcome a new guest to the MACE Podcast, Rich Smith from the United States. Rich helps leaders decode why marketing works by translating behavioral science into strategy CEOs can trust and communicate. With over 30 years of experience as a CMO and executive driving billions in revenue, major turnarounds, and high impact growth across financial services, tech, healthcare, and consumer finance, Rich is really the man who is able to strategize operation services and make sure that there is a growth. He's the founder of the Rich Smith Growth Studio, host of the Revenue Science podcast, and a frequent speaker who bridges the gap between the marketing and the boardroom. I'm so excited to speak with Rich about leadership, about culture, about growth and strategy. Which are the trends that we see in 2026 for the companies and organizations that want to grow? Why is leadership so important for a company and for an organization that wants to grow? And last but not least, culture. Why is so important that leaders take culture into consideration if they want to ensure a growth in their companies or organizations? Please enjoy our conversation and stay tuned. Hi, Rich. Good morning. How are you? And welcome to the MACE Podcast.
I'm doing well. Buongiorno, Marco.
Thanks a lot. I'm so excited, Rich, that you have joined me as a guest in the MACE Podcast. Are you based in the United States? Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, I'm based just outside of Philadelphia.
Great. As you know, I'm based in Italy, so I'm very happy, to have people joining me from the other side of the planet, because the Mace
Yeah.
podcast is more than ever international. Rich, I have already shared a little bit of your background, of your experience with our audience. You are an expert in strategy, growth, and marketing. And of course, you have worked with executives in many different industries. To kick off this episode, and my first question with such a background, I'm interested to know how can leaders strategize growth when scaling their businesses, which are the pillars, in your view, that a strategy should have when building a business and scaling a business or creating nuances in the business as well. So, which is your view?
Well, I'm often asked by CEOs, founders, people that I work with, questions like, should we be on Facebook, or should we be doing more with Google search, or should we be sending more email campaigns or attending trade shows or things of that
Yeah,
nature? And my answer is always maybe. Right? It really depends on your strategy, your business, your customers, et cetera. So there's a tendency to jump to tactics, to think about the tactics that you need to use before thinking about the strategy that you
yeah,
need to employ. So, one piece of advice that I give every CEO I talk to is, how deep do you understand your customers? How deep do you understand your competition? How
yeah,
deep do you understand your own company? Because many times you'd be surprised how people within your own company don't really know what the goals are,
yeah,
don't really know what the mission is, aren't clear on what the brand message should be. And I don't care whether it's just a small company or a company with 100,000 employees, it's important all the way up and down the line. That's one place to start. Is like, do you feel like you've got solid insights
yeah.
in those three areas? Because that's really what it takes to inform your strategy and to be able to put a strategy in place that then will lead to growth.
Yeah, thanks a lot for sharing. So let's say that it's not black and white, right? So we needed to really understand the nuances of the business itself in order, to provide a good advice when a leader or when a CEO, wants to make such a kind of step in scaling a business or not. So I think that that's important. We spoke about leadership, and I know that you are working, you have worked with many executives and leaders. We know that leadership plays a pivotal role in the organizational success and growth. My second question for you is about leadership. How can upper management and the board make sure that there is an alignment in the leadership and in the organization when leading business decisions, that have an impact across the entire organization as well?
Yeah, that's a really great question and critically important to success in any organization.
Yeah,
And it sounds simple, but it's really hard in practice, right? It sounds simple to have very clear objectives. Typically I would counsel companies to have at the highest level, right, the board or CEO level, you probably can only really handle about 3 to 5 real objectives per
yeah,
year, right? But it's really important that they be very clear, that they be linked to your long-term vision or your long-term outcome, right? I always suggest that you start by write the end of the movie first and then write backwards how you're going to get there. So in other words, visualize where you want to be with your organization in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Time frame doesn't matter that much, but have a time frame and then work back to, okay, well, if we want to be here in 5 years, then we need to be here this year.
yeah,
And that becomes your objectives for this year. So having a very clear set of objectives is where it begins. But then you have to, as you get down into the organization, you have to show each person how their personal objectives attach to those company objectives,
yeah,
right? Super important. And like anything, if I've got teenagers at home, right? I'm sure many of your audience has experienced this as well. You
yeah,
ask your teenager to clean their room, and they do a great job. They clean it, and then a week later, it's a mess again, right? And that's just one of those laws of the universe. Things naturally move from order to disorder.
yeah,
So if you don't want to be in a situation where, what are we almost at the end of March, where you would walk down the hall and ask one of your team members what the objectives are for the year, and they can't answer that question or they've forgotten, right? Part of the success in making all this work is regular check-ins on these
yeah,
objectives,
yeah.
and those check-ins are super important. And you keep coming back to as a leadership team, you keep coming back to those high-level objectives that you set, and that's really what you're talking about in your weekly staff meetings and monthly quarterly meetings.
Yeah, definitely. And in addition to that, can we say that also communication, right, plays a pivotal role? And working with many leaders and executives, which is the best, the style that works the best, in your opinion, in your experience? If you would like to share a couple of advice with our audience.
Yeah, I think communication style, everybody's a little bit different. I've worked
Yeah,
with founders that are more extroverted and, kind of larger than life. And I've worked with founders that are more introverted and, more like a Steve Jobs type of person that is really brilliant, but doesn't really let it out. So everybody's got a slightly different communication style. So it's not like there's one answer to that question.
hmm,
But what I would say is that because everyone has a different communication style, and it's not just the words we speak, it's how we hear and interpret things
yeah,
as well. Um, a really great practice to do with your leadership team is, there are many online diagnostic tools. If any of your audience are interested in these, they can certainly contact me and I'll make a recommendation. But there are many online diagnostic tools that you can take together as
yeah,
a team so that you understand, what each person's communication style is.
yeah.
And as a leader, what that allows you to do is to frame your communication to a particular individual in a way that they're most likely to receive and understand it.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry I can't give you one answer to the question, but
No,
but
but
that
actually, this is
that's
a good one because we needed to ask for help when utilizing tools or utilizing things that are already set, right? In order to understand how we can manage this landscape of communication. That is a big one, as you
yeah. I
mentioned.
mean, one really simple practice that
Yeah,
that you can do is just when you're having a conversation with someone, clarify. You
Yeah.
know, here's what I'm saying. Can you say it back to me? Like,
Yeah.
what did you hear? And if they heard something else, that's without doing, upfront diagnostics or what have you. Just
Yeah.
that kind of practice will help you dial in on it.
I totally agree with you. And this is actually, a good tool in order to understand a good method, to understand that, we are on the same page, we are aligned. So I think that this is taken for granted sometimes, but it should not, because this ensures, alignment, even in the big and in the small pieces of the day by day that, we need to run.
Right.
Um, so thanks a lot for sharing. Moving on, connected to leadership, there is also another big topic, which is culture. And I'm sure that working with leaders and executives, this is a big one also, on which you have your brain on as well. How can culture, profitable, and growth be multiple faces of the same coin? What do you think?
Well, culture is critically important within an organization, and it's still surprising. I think most leaders are understanding that at this point, but it is still surprising that many times you get a blank stare when you talk about culture, and people think like, well, why is that important, and what does it mean? And really, the answer is, culture is what people use to make decisions when you're not in the room.
Yeah, I love it.
And if you think as a CEO or founder or even a leader of a division that you can be in every room and you can be a part of every decision, if you're trying to do that, then you're actually becoming a bottleneck and slowing down the growth of your business,
Yeah.
right? So you have to give people a framework within which to make good decisions
Mhm.
that are aligned to the company's objectives. And that is culture.
Yeah, so we cannot avoid speaking about culture, and this needs to be framed and set, in order to let everyone make the right decision. I agree with you, and I think that this is a trend. So some organizations are paying even more attention, to culture and to make sure that this culture can be instilled from leadership. But do you agree that at the end of the day, each individual can play a pivotal role in ensuring that there is a positive culture in the organization? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, whether they do it consciously or not consciously, every
Yeah,
individual in the organization does play a role in the
yeah,
culture because they're part of the organization. It's just like cells in the human body. Well, are the cells in my finger more important than the cells in, yes, probably there are there are different levels of importance, but
yeah,
they all play a role and they all roll up into, who and what you are. And so, yeah, every individual plays a role in the culture, either for good or for bad, either positively advancing the culture or negatively taking away from the culture. And it's important to be able to identify that
yeah,
and make sure that you're, and again, we go back to the story of the teenager in their room, constantly going from order to disorder. The
yeah.
same is true with culture. It's not like you can just hold a meeting and say, here's our new company culture. Let's just use this going forward.
Hmm.
Okay. First off, people aren't going to believe that that's authentic. And
Yeah,
second, uh, no one's going to really, if you don't reinforce it constantly and meet about it and talk about it and have incentive plans that reinforce it and metrics that reinforce it, uh, you won't be able to actually maintain that culture.
yeah, I totally agree with you, Rich. So thanks for sharing as well such advice with the audience. We spoke about growth, we spoke about leadership, we spoke about culture. Now let's move on because speaking with, of course, leaders and executives as well, with other guests in my podcast, I see many trends and many leaders speaking about quality when scaling the business and when making decisions, especially when the impact that now we see with the AI and with technology. Can you elaborate more on why the human factor matters still, and which is the trend we see when getting AI, artificial intelligence, into the business? If you have any story or an experience to share.
Yeah, I get this kind of question a lot, and I really think about how we should break down what to do about
Yeah.
AI into two ways. And I call them kind of the two A's of AI. On the one
Yeah.
hand, you have what I would call adoption. And
Hmm.
that really refers to the tools that you use to run your business,
Yeah.
right? Are you bringing in tools that either improve efficiency, cost, right? It's easy to get caught up, and there's so many proliferating tools out there right now. It's easy to get caught up in chasing shiny objects, but you need to be thoughtful about that with your business. Like, how are we incorporating AI into what we do that makes
Yeah.
us more efficient and provides a better customer experience?
Yeah.
On the other hand, the other A of is adaptation, and I think this is the one that people ignore too much. And by
Yeah.
adaptation, I mean how are you adapting your go-to-market strategy for the new consumer reality that AI is creating?
Yeah.
Right? We all, whether you're selling B2B or B2C, we're all buyers, we're all consumers, and as buyers and consumers, we're using AI to sort out what we should purchase, what we shouldn't purchase, get
Yeah.
reviews. In fact, AI search is now, in many ways taking
Yeah.
over from
In top.
organic search.
Yeah.
And so if you're not thinking about, all right, well, my customer is out there using AI tools. They're using AI search tools or using AI tools for efficiency within their own workflow, daily life, you name it. How are we adapting? Because that's a sea change. I mean, this is an
Yeah.
inflection point in customer experience. And
Yeah.
how are we adapting what we do for that reality that our buyer is existing in right now?
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I really thinking about, these two way of managing AI, and cascading AI in our life. I totally agree with you. And, it depends on us and depends on the why we are using AI. And this should be actually on top of our decision and on top of our thoughts. When changing things in a way that AI can, bring something in, speaking from an added value standpoint. So yeah, I totally agree with you, and I hope that the audience, can take advantage of this advice because sometimes, we don't pay attention to these details. Thanks a lot for sharing, Rich. Now, wrapping up our conversation, is there any last quote that you or last thought that you would like to share with our audience today?
Well, yeah, like I would say this, if you're starting out an organization, the most efficient way to get new customers is to find those customers that are in your target audience that are closest to the
Hmm.
buying decision. There's a continuum all the way from we've never heard of you and we don't even know that we need the solution that you're providing, all the way down to I've got my credit card or cash in hand and I'm ready to buy it.
Yeah,
So the most efficient way to grow is to start with finding people that are as close to that buying decision as possible. All right. And then as you scale, you sort of work back up. So
hmm,
you get to the point where, okay, now we're a large organization, and now we're really driving awareness and brand consideration, right?
yeah,
Don't start with that if you're beginning a business or you're trying to think about where your next growth stage comes from. Even if you're launching a new product in a well-established business, that new product target the people that are closest to the buying decision already
yeah.
and find them. And that's how you drive your tactics.
Yeah, thanks a lot for sharing. I appreciate that a lot. And of course, I will be sharing with the audience the link of your podcast because you are a business podcaster as well. I'm very happy, that we have the same passion here, join together in order,
Yeah.
to let the audience explore more on what you share in your podcast about, business scaling and business growth. Because I'm sure that, the audience can treasure more about the advice and about the, the tips and tricks that you're going to speak about in your podcast. Rich, thanks a lot. It has been a pleasure to have you on the MACE podcast. I cannot wait to see how the podcast goes and how the episode goes. Stay tuned. And of course, all the best. All the best. Stay tuned in
Okay.
LinkedIn to see what's next. Thanks, Rich.
Great. Thanks so much, Marco. Really appreciate you having me on and enjoyed the conversation a lot.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.